Hi, everybody. Welcome to More Books with B. Sharice. I'm your host, B. Sharice Moore. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think this is our maybe my 10th show. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you haven't been here before, and if you're returning for a second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever time, thank you so much for coming back. All right, so I'm here in my classroom. I just finished up some grades. Interim reports are coming out soon, so I wanted to make sure I had those grades, cleared away for my sixth grade students. Okay, so some housekeeping right now. Make sure you get out your pens, your pencil, your notebook, and your phone. Okay, so I want you to take some notes on what I'm about to say. Okay, so this week's book of the week is called The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Again, that's The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. The Poet X is a novel in verse, and um, it's stunning. It's phenomenal. I have nothing but amazing things to say about this book. It took me maybe about a week to get through it. Again, it's a novel in verse. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with novels in verse, they are exactly what they sound like. They are stories that are told in poetry form. Okay, so these are novels in verse. All right, so I'm going to tell you a few secrets about novels in verse. I talked a little bit about this when I did the video, my very first video on Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. Um, and I have to say that when I observe my students reading novels in verse, not only are they engaged, but they're not intimidated by them. There's something about this white space, all right? This white space here that gives them the confidence to be able to complete a 357 page book on their own. Okay? Again, this book is 357 pages. If you talk to your average struggling or reluctant reader and you gave them this book, they'd look at you like you had three heads. Okay? Because one thing I know about my students who are reluctant to read or struggling readers is they haven't found the right book, number one. And number two, they do not have the confidence in themselves much of the time that they can finish a book, that they can complete a book. And even though this is 357 pages long, all right, some of the poems are haiku, senryu, excuse me, let me be specific. And some of them are just shorter form poems, okay, really, really short poems that take up just a page or not even a page, okay, maybe an eighth of a page, all right? And this is welcoming to students who are reluctant to read, students who struggle to read, okay? So, novels in verse, check them out. They're great for those kinds of readers, okay? Um, the Poet X is about a young woman named Xiomara, okay? Xiomara is Dominican, all right? She is Afro-Latina, and she's growing up with her Dominican family, her mother, her father, and her brother. And this is in present day Harlem, New York. Xiomara is a high school student, okay, and she talks a lot about religion, okay. So through Xiomara, Acevedo does a brilliant job of discussing the questions that teenagers and sometimes adults have about religion and about Jesus and about specifically about Christianity. And she comes from a very strict Dominican family. And the major conflict in the Poet X is Xiomara's resistance to be baptized, her resistance to take communion, and her resistance to fit herself into this box that her mother has carved out for her. So in this book, her mother is the antagonist. She's an old school Dominican woman. She has her own very limited, very strict ideas about what a young Dominican girl should do, how she should speak, how she should dress, how she should talk. And Xiomara is resisting and rebelling against this throughout the entire text. The book is also about love. Xiomara experiences a vibrant and, you know, really beautiful young love as the story progresses, and it's quite unexpected. Um, and of course, later down the line, without telling you too much about the story, she finds solace in not just writing poetry, because she's writing poetry from the beginning, the main character, but in actually performing that poem, performing those poems that have been tucked away in her poetry books that were gifted to her by her brother and best friend for so long. Okay. Um, I really love how honest and raw the Poet X is. I taught high school for several years, and while teaching high school, I really got a feel for my students. At that time, I actually wasn't that much older than many of them, but it has just the right amount of teenage angst and teenage confusion and self doubt as it does the courage and the bravery. Acevedo has created a character in Xiomara that is beautiful and unapologetic, and she questions her parents. She questions religion more than I ever dared to when I was her age, when I was, an 11th grader, when I was, 16, 17 years old. And I admire that this character that Acevedo has created. I've had a few students. I had my 8th grade read this book. This was in my classroom library last year. I do not have it this year in my classroom library for my 6th graders because I just feel like it's too racy. There are there's a lot of not a lot, but there's sexuality in this book, and there are some scenes that are a tiny bit graphic, I feel, for my 6th graders and for my classroom. So I've chosen not to put this book in my classroom library, and I'd recommend this book for 8th grade and up. All right. To be quite honest, some of you might even think 8th grade is too young. I don't, because I think about what 8th graders, the average 8th graders, are exposed to. So I don't necessarily believe that it's too much for them, but it's definitely too much for 6th graders who, are 11 and 12 years old. And so I chose to remove this from my library. But of course, use your discretion as an educator, as a parent, as to what you want to expose your children to. So let's get to the activity. Since the book is about spoken word and it is about a young poet finding her voice, I thought it might be a great activity to have students write a monologue. Okay, as someone who was on the spoken word scene for many, many, many years, um, writing my poetry was always awesome, but performing it was a totally different experience. And I think it would be great to open up that experience to your students, give them that opportunity to write, to memorize, and to perform, okay, if they'd like to. So, the very beginning of the book, the very first poem is called Stoop Sitting. And she talks about Harlem in the summer. And if you know anything about New York City, you know that it is extremely diverse, all right? At any given time, you can see any group of people from any place, throughout the entire world, to be quite honest. You have individuals from the Caribbean, individuals from South America, from Africa, individuals of European descent, of Asian descent, all right? And they all inhabit this technically small space, which is New York City. And of course, Harlem is a portion of New York City. So in Stoop Sitting, she talks about the fire hydrant. She talks about all the Dominican men that she sees playing dominoes and slamming their dominoes down. She talks about the Dominican boys who are, catcalling her from across the street. And she hits on all of this in just a small, let me see, how many lines is this poem? Stoop sitting is only, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like about 8 stanzas, 8 3 or 4 line stanzas, and a few single lines mixed in. All right, and it's just such a vibrant poem. It's spilling over with tons of imagery. I know what New York City looks like, smells like, sounds like in the summer, and Acevedo did a fantastic job capturing it in Stoop Sitting, the first poem, as well as throughout the entire book. So, how about we have students write a Where I'm From poem or a poem about their hometown? All right. And as they write, they keep in mind figurative language, simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, imagery. All right. And they keep in mind rhythm. And once they finish writing their poem, then their next step is to memorize it if they'd like, depending upon what you'd like to do as a teacher. And then once they memorize the poem, then they perform it in front of an audience. Okay, so what I will do is I have a template for a Where I'm From poem that I use. I used it last year with my sixth graders, and it was just an awesome way to introduce them to poetry and to have them thinking outside of the box about different images that they may not ordinarily use in writing. Sometimes taking that leap from the literal to the figurative is a little difficult for our students. So I'll attach that template to the description section. And what I will also do is I will attach the corresponding Common Core standards. All right, because here you have reading standards for reading the book, you'll have writing standards, and you'll also have speaking and listening standards. So I'll attach that as well. And for those of you, if you may not be comfortable with putting the entire book into your classroom library and you just want to, take out a few poems, that's also advisable too. There are a few that are available that you can share with your students just to show them excellent examples of imagery and a figurative language because Acevedo does a fantastic job of writing these and demonstrating this in her poetry. All right, so I'm a little long-winded today. I was trying to stick to the shorter videos, but this book just requires so much. It's so full with such conflict and such folds and folds and folds and layers of of adolescent angst, as I said before, of questions and coming of age and young love, and sexuality, and I just wanted to make sure I did it justice. Okay, so as I look, I'm still under 15 minutes, so hopefully I didn't take up too much of your time. But thank you so much for tuning in. Like, comment, please comment, send me some comments. Okay, let me know what you think. Subscribe and share. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Like, comment, subscribe, share. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you pick up The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. She takes you on a fantastic journey through a young Afro Latino's journey through adolescence. And thank you for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye bye.